This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in Northeast Mississippi called Columbus, and sometimes I write about the rest of the state. Tonight, I am continuing my search in the Columbus Housing Authority and the Columbus Community Housing Development Organization, which is their nonprofit arm. Let's just get right into it. So, a couple of things happened this past week. I went to the board meeting last Wednesday, I think. And Rusty Walker from Gulfport, who is a member of their city council, who owns a company called Future Spec, who has a contract here that I don't know if they gave him a raise, but anyways, he's making over $4,000 a month on our money. Anyways, he's a smooth talker and all that good stuff. So he kind of reminds me of Professor Harold Hill from Music Man. Anyways, I digress. He was in a discussion with the president of the commission. The president of the commission asked why they were not doing sealed bids with the large products that they've put out recently, namely the roofing. Now they're going to have to do the sprinkler systems in some buildings and some various different things that they're working on that are very expensive projects. And the discussion went back and forth. And what I thought was interesting is that in the board minutes, it says that they limit their ceiling to $175,000. Anything over $175K had to be bid out in a sealed bid, I believe. I could be speaking wrong, but that in order for them to avoid having to put out national ads and things like that, they had a ceiling. And so one of the commissioners asked, well, you've got bids that were 250K. And Rusty said, well, yeah. Y'all talked about that and blah, blah, blah. Well, I went back to the minutes all the way back to, I think, 2019. And the only note I found was the ceiling was raised to 175,000. Now that means we've had all these bids done over the last 4 or 5 years that are in violation of that 175K limit. And now they want to move it to 250,000. But I think the cart is in front of the horse. I think they can't, well, I guess they could change their bylaws or their meeting minutes, but they are still over that 175K that already exists in those minutes. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. What I also thought was interesting was that the commissioner asked him, how do you get the people to bid on these projects? And he's kind of admitted to calling the people that they had done business with before. And she said, well, how do we know you didn't tell, let's say, Connerly to bid 248 so that it would be under, let's say, Gamma Roofing's $250,000 bid? We don't know. And he refused to answer the question, and he kind of changed the subject, and it was kind of an odd, tense moment. She tried to push for the answer, and Robert Greathree changed the subject. So that was all very interesting. But on Monday of this week, I went over to meet Jackie Stennis, who is the director of the Seasons of Success Mississippi K12 Century Grant. She runs an after-school program. She's running a school, essentially. The kids come to what used to be Palmer Home. They arrive and they go to the gym or they go to their classroom and they get a snack and they do their homework. And then after everybody's there, they start their program. And it's an amazing program. She's getting great results out of these kids. Jackie is the consummate educator. I'm super impressed. There's some people down in Harrison County who are very interested in what she's doing, and hopefully are going to be able to come up here in the next month or so and tour the facilities and learn from her program. I was just most impressed with her programming, even more so with her fiscal responsibilities and what a warm, nurturing learning center each of those classroom spaces and education spaces were. They teach the kids STEM, math, English, and they use a computer lab to support a lot of the reading and the mathematics skills. And then they have social emotional learning there, which is superbly important in this day and age. But what I found most interesting was that she was telling me, and she gave me her budget and she gave me all her purchase orders and how she gets approximately for several years, she's gotten $250,000 a year as part of this grant. And it looks like she's been renewed for another grant from this same organization. They've recognized what she's doing. Looks like they might add another grade to it, although that's not clear if that's something the school district wanted or the grant wanted. What was most interesting to me was to find out that Columbus Community Housing Development Organization is the fiscal agent, but the money is not at CHDO. It's a reimbursable grant. So they have to expend the funds and then get reimbursed for spending. So the money is coming from Columbus Housing Authority from the HUD monies, and then it's getting deposited into CHDO. And then CHDO pays, and then CHDO is supposed to bill back to the Mississippi Department of Education to get reimbursed. Now, this is where things get complicated. I've been going through bank reports and I'm not seeing $250,000 worth of reimbursements from anything. I might have found $75,000 over the last 2 years of banking and with the Columbus Community Housing Development Organization, the nonprofit. But I can see that Miss Stennis has spent all of her funds, as she should, for the things the children need for the program, for support materials, education materials, the things that they need. She's also spent money out of her own pocket. For instance, the air conditioner went out in her office. It's upstairs, it's hot. It is also a reading center up in the upstairs, and she paid out of her own pocket to have a new HVAC unit put in for just for the upstairs. The program has installed security systems and lock systems and things like that. So keypad doors and things like that for the protection of the children. And anyways, the long and the short of it is these things have been purchased and paid for, and I can't see where the executive director, Robert Greathree from Columbus Housing Authority and CHDO, has bothered to do the reimbursements or has followed up with the reimbursements, or if he did, where the money went, because it's not in their accounts. And let me explain what I'm talking about. There is a Bank of Commerce account that looks, it's called a Business Sapphire account. There is a Bank First account, that's their checking account. And then they have Renaissance and a couple of others. Now, what I see in the Bank First account, which is their checking account, is that there are maybe a handful of Mississippi check payments that could be fund reimbursements. One is for $2,207 in February of this year. One is, I think I saw it was $28,000, but none of it adds up in 1 year to $250,000. So I don't know where the money's going, which leads me to a story I want to tell you. If you'll remember, in Columbus a couple of years ago, man, it's been more than a couple now, there was a gentleman who worked for an earlier administration from before the current mayor. I think it may have been 2 administrations ago. This fellow was in charge of monies for the city. This fellow got monies in the form of checks that were supposed to come to the city, and instead of them being deposited to the correct accounts, the city's accounts, he had made parallel accounts that had very similar names. And so these monies, and I think some of them were grants, those monies were deposited into those accounts, which were really dummy accounts, which were really his accounts. And he was the only person who had access to them. And that is what landed him in jail. So instead of, let's just make up an account, it should have been Columbus Wastewater Treatment Center account. He would set up a parallel account called Columbus Waste and Water Treatment Center. So he would just change one word in it or the order of the word to make it different. So because I can't find this money at Columbus Community Housing, I have some really strange questions, but we'll get back to that and we'll bring it back to what happened with the money in the city. Let me talk about a few other things. The Bank of Commerce account for CHDO, very small account. It normally only has about $1,500 in it. In 2023, it had $1,543.52. That's at the end of 2023. In May of 2024, it still only had that $1,543 and some odd cents. That continues on until October of 2024. Now, what happened in October of 2024? And why is it the Bank of Commerce we need to look at? Well, first of all, the Bank of Commerce is who holds the note to all the properties that CCHDO has that are over in that Bittersweet complex. If you'll remember, the Bittersweet complex is North Haven Woods. Those are a neighborhood of homes that have been, that they purchased a series of homes that were being built by Jabari Edwards' organization, and they were supposed to be part of I think it was called a Section 42 program. Anyway, it was a path to homeownership for people on low or fixed incomes. And the program dissolved, etc. Jabari Edwards wanted out of that business, and he wanted to go more into environmental work, and those houses were purchased. I don't know what they finally spent, but at one point, the note at the Bank of Commerce was $1,160,000 just for those properties. Properties over at Palmer were another in 3 or 4 million. Anyways, they owned these houses and they tried to sell them. Now, they did sell a couple of them, one of which they closed on October 25th of 2024. The house sold for probably around a little over $120,000. And I know that I can find the amount the person who bought the house borrowed. Now, did they borrow all of their money? I don't know, but I know what they borrowed. And it is a house on Bittersweet. They purchased this home. The closing was October 25th, 2024. Now, that's important to remember. When an organization has a loan on multiple properties like this, let's say you're a developer, the bank does not take every penny you make off the first house you sell or the first properties you sell. They take a percentage because they want you to make a profit. I've discussed this before. In this particular case, I feel pretty certain that I know where that money went. So, CCHDO had a deposit on that same day, October 25th of 2024, the same day that house sold. They had a deposit in their Bank of Commerce account, that same account that previously only had $1,500 in it, for $83,232.50. Remarkably, that is 67% of that 120K plus that I had mentioned. Why is that significant? Because that suggests that the bank took 30 to 33%. Now, they probably took 30% and another 3% was used in the closing. Regardless, on October 25th, 2024, a check was deposited at the Bank of Commerce in an account that ends in 7801 for $83,232.50. That money sat there until January 16th of 2024. For 2.5 months, that money just sat there. And then on January the 16th, Commissioner Greta Gardner authorized $50,000 to be removed from that account and deposited in the CCHDO checking account. Now, why is that significant? Number one, at that point in January of 2025, Greta Gardner was not an authorized signatory on banking documents. She had been, but she wasn't at that point because she was no longer an officer of either board. Number two, there are no meeting minutes preceding or after. Now, the most interesting thing is there's not one meeting minute from 2024 or 2025 that says that that house was sold or the amount or what they wanted to do with the money when the house was sold. My question is, did the board know that the house was even on the market, and did they know that the house had sold? We don't know. However, that check, that amount 50,000 of that 83,000 got moved into Chodo's checking account, which they were kind of in a bind because at that point, Robert had over $447 just in overdraft fees on the Chodo checking account. So the next thing is we see that in March, so just 2 months later, in March the 7th of 2025, another 30,000 from that Bank of Commerce account is moved over to the Chodo checking account. They moved $80,000 of the sale from that house into the checking account. Into the checking account that they also had significant deposits already coming in. But it's curious to me that all this money is moved around and there's no discussion of the money in the meeting minutes for the monthly meeting. Let me explain. We know that every month, $10,434 comes out of the Chodo checking account to pay toward their note. There is another amount that's removed that's $6,347,000. It would be my guess that the $10,000 pays for the Palmer properties. The $6,000 perhaps goes to the loan on the homes over in Bittersweet, although that's not clear. Then we have the deposits that come in from the housing authority, and we have money going out. And it's not clear where any of this money's going. We do know that on February 28th, right before the March 3rd movement of 30,000, that the Mississippi Housing Authority had put $96,000 into Chodo's account. So what are they spending all this money on and why? For example, on February 4th, they have a check that was deposited for $2,207. Then they have a deposit of $3,592, another for $4,337, and then a deposit of $104,897. Now, I don't even know where any of these come from. These may be direct deposits from organizations. That $104,000 could be from the Mississippi Department of Education. Not clear. Then they got $96,000. They had 5 credits totaling $211,188. So it's not clear to me why the very next month they had to pay, that $96,000 ends up as a chargeback, which doesn't make sense. I'm not sure what that's about. But anyways, they had all this money coming in, and then the next month they needed $30,000 more. What are they spending their money on? Why? None of it adds up. None of it makes sense. And it's not clear where all this money is going. So I'm going to go back to my conversation about money. Here are my questions, and they are just questions. I do not have an answer. I am not suggesting any of these things happen. However, we must entertain these possibilities. 1, Robert Greathree has not filed any of the reimbursements from the Department of Education for the monies that were spent. So let me review. The money comes from Columbus Housing Authority, $250,000 worth. It gets put into this program to float them until they get reimbursed. The reimbursing agent is Robert Greathree. We know that Ms. Stennis has put in all her paperwork. She has turned everything over to Robert that she needs to turn over so that he can get the reimbursement. My question revolves around, did he do the reimbursements? 2, did he do the reimbursements and the money didn't come back into the program, back into Chodo? We can't tell. Where did it go? Did it come into an account that we don't know about? What would that look like? Or my next question is, if it came back into Chodo, which I cannot see, I cannot find where it has, if the money or a partial part of the money, let's just say he hasn't reimbursed all of it. Let's say he got half the reimbursements. Why were those reimbursements not then given back to the Columbus Housing Authority, who supplied the money to start with? Because that is HUD money. Did they defederalize that money? If they defederalize 250,000 plus all the other monies they've given to Chodo over the year, does that put them over their limit for defederalizing money? Does that put them over their cap? I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I don't know how they can move money back and forth. All I know is money is moving around in all kinds of ways. The other problem I see is commingling of funds. For example, in the Chodo checking account, I can see that monies have been spent from Chodo to pay for things over at the Columbus Housing Authority. I have also seen that in the Columbus Housing Authority's bank ledger, the monies from the Housing Authority are being used to pay for items and services and things at Chodo and at the Seasons of Success School. So it is paramount that we get to the bottom of this. They need a really good forensic auditor. I'm not a forensic auditor. I am pulling content. I am examining everything. My team is looking at things. I do have an auditor who's on my team, and we all agree that we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, that either they are not filing for reimbursements, or the reimbursements are coming in and they're not going into the proper accounts, or possibly there are additional accounts that we don't know about. This is all very interesting. It creates more questions for me than answers. So I have sent off for more FOIA requests, both with the agency and with federal entities. I am going to ask for the specifics from their 990s, because it's not clear to me that their 990s are declaring the monies that include this 250,000 that they are the fiscal agents for. So I'm seeing all kinds of irregularities in banking and monies and fiscal responsibility. One of the things that I have also have to push for is I can tell from the meeting minutes that I have not been given all the bank accounts that are attached to the Columbus Housing Authority. That's from my second FOIA request. So I have gone back and I'm pushing for the rest of the information that I didn't get, that I should have gotten on those accounts. The other piece that I don't have is I continue to ask for the final closeout inspections for the roofing jobs that they've done since 2020. What's interesting is I've been given the warranties from finally, I just got those because I had to push for them. I got the warranties from the roofers. I should have had those in a previous FOIA request. They say they don't keep up with the disposal, where the disposal of the roofing shingles have gone, which I find preposterous. I'm still missing the work log that should come with their closeout documents. I'm still missing the pre-final inspection and the final inspection. So I have asked for all those things. I should have them by Friday. I have also asked for the inspection and the history of the inspections on the house that I posted the photos of the family that has had no air conditioning for over a month, and who in July, and who have a black mold problem that is not being attended. And apparently they have been working on their unit, so hopefully it's much better now for that family. And hopefully there will be nothing punitive done to them because of bringing light to that issue. I have also done a public records request for additional information. I want information on all the air conditioning that they have purchased, including HVAC units, since 2020. I find it interesting that Mr. Greathree hasn't even responded to acknowledge that he has that request. He has responded to the one about the home where I'm getting the inspection sheets. But more to come. I'm at a point now where, while I wait for more content to come in and for my team to digest it, I may take a little break from this and start doing a little history so that I won't become too angry about how ridiculous and how wasteful all this is. Mostly, I'm just disgusted that nobody seems to care. There are days I think it's just me, And then I'll get a note, I'll get some insights. I'll have a tenant in those units who'll send me a letter saying, please help. No one else seems to care. No one else seems to speak up about us. Don't know where to take this other than I have turned it over to HUD investigators. We've been in communication. I've been in talks with the Public Housing Administration. I've placed as many emails as I can to any agencies and entities who have the ability to help and have the ability to come in and straighten out this mess. It just frustrates me that month after month after month, this is going on. Nothing has still been done about that theft of the money for the truck. Nobody seems to care about where that is. Not even the attorney for the board. I think they think that they'll just think that they'll get insurance money. And so where's that stand? Haven't they said they were going to appeal to their insurance for the scam? Haven't heard another word about that. Have they even done that? Haven't heard an update on what the Oklahoma Attorney General's investigator has come up with. It's like, so what? Next, move on. It's not their money. It doesn't come out of their personal pockets. They don't care that they're wasting money day after day after day after day. It is unfathomable to me that the level of misappropriation, misuse, just the lies, it just blows my mind that the Board of Commissioners can't get their, pardon me for cursing, they can't seem to get their shit together and hold the executive director accountable for anything. It's like they don't want to, they don't care. They've given him carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wants and spend that money and waste that money. And I have no idea where the bottom of this is, because it is clear to me that the Board of Commissioners, if they're not corrupt, they're complicit. If they're not complicit, they're just lazy and don't want to do their job, which I can't believe. These are good people. I can't believe that they don't want to do their job. We sat through a board meeting this past week on Wednesday where one of the members, Greta Gardner, decides that so it's time to do a re-election. And Ms. Whirly Bird made a motion to maintain Kendra Gray as the president. And Greta jumps in and said she wants to do a substitute motion and she wants to nominate him. Him being the person at the end of the table. It was Bo Harrison. Now, Bo's probably a nice guy. I don't know him. He seems pleasant enough. I've spoken to him once or twice. But Bo he's not renominated to the board yet. City Council hasn't met, and Bo's term was temporary. He was only there to fill up, I think, Greg Lewis's term when Greg Lewis had to step down due to conflict of interest. Since he's a city employee, he couldn't sit on that board. Anyways, Bo sits in somebody's place who would have rolled off the board. So essentially his term is up. He can still come, he can still vote until they nominate somebody to either renominate Bo to stay on the board, or somebody else comes on the board to take his place. But we won't know that till the city council meets in September, because it had to be advertised for 30 days, is my understanding. So Greta points at somebody she doesn't even know his darn name, and he's not even on the board really. So she wants to make him president. The most frustrating thing of all was that Bo has not been to a single training with HUD. So he's been serving since March or April, and he's not been to any training, except for the one training where the trainer came to Columbus to help them to learn their position. So you want to make somebody the board president to deal with a multi-million-dollar budget who's not even technically on the board anymore, and who's never been to a HUD training. That kind of, in a nutshell, tells you everything you need to know about what's going on at the Columbus Housing Authority. It's like it's like the lunatics are in charge of the asylum. I I don't know. It just makes no sense. And I don't know how this gets untangled. I kind of hope HUD comes in, swoops down, gets rid of the board, gets rid of the executive director, and HUD comes in, cleans house, and makes them start all over. They've done it before in other places. It would be nice if they did it here, but I don't know. All I know is our tenants deserve better. If Columbus Housing Authority and Chodo are going to have the old Palmer home, they need to do a better job of taking care of the grounds and taking care of the facilities. It looks abandoned and the grass is almost up to my waist and they've just left stuff out. Anyways, it just doesn't look like anybody gives a damn. And it's a shame because one, the Palmer facilities are gorgeous and should be doing a lot more. They have all that farmland. They have so much out there they could be doing with that land and those facilities. There are all those houses that they own and are renting out or are sitting empty. There's a bunch of them sitting empty right now. I think I saw 4 big units sitting empty over in North Haven Woods. I plan to do a complete podcast episode on what it costs for them to turn a house, one of those houses, when they go from when they're rentals and they turn them over into turnover tenants. They're spending a whole lot of money out there. It just seems like the Columbus Housing Authority has gotten all caught up through Chodo in buying land and things and buildings and not taking care of what their mission is, which is caring for low income families who just need a hand. That's all I got to say tonight. I want to thank you for coming on my podcast, The Tom Baby Tales, and hopefully the next episode will be more upbeat, or at least I'll have information about somebody finding money or getting arrested. Until next time, I'm Shannon Evans, and this is The Tom Baby Tales.